On today's podcast, we are thrilled to have Wendy Feldstein, VP of Design at Crestron Electronics, a global leader in audio-visual automations and integrations. With over 30 years of experience, Wendy oversees and engineers the creation of Crestron mechanical products and is named on more than 73 patents. She is the firm believer in employee development and empowering young girls and women to pursue STEM education. Wendy is also committed to giving back her community and volunteers her time on several local boards. We're excited to hear her inspiring story.
Welcome to our podcast on Industry 4.0. The fourth industrial revolution that is transforming the way we manufacture, communicate, and operate. In this podcast, we will explore the advancements in technology and how they are revolutionizing the manufacturing industry. From automation, robotics, and machine learning to the Internet of Things and big data. We will delve into the possibilities and challenges of Industry 4.0. Our guests will include industry leaders, experts, and innovators who will share their insights and experiences on this rapidly evolving field. Join us as we explore the future of manufacturing and its impact on the global economy.
We're here in Crestron on-site live with Wendy Feldstein, and we have the pleasure to spend a few minutes with Wendy out of her really hectic schedule. And thank you so much, Wendy.
Well, thank you. Good to see you.
Yeah, appreciate it. So Crestron started in 1969.
Well, it's technically 1972 when we became officially Crestron Electronics Incorporated.
Oh, so. Great. I'm sure at the early days, it's a really tough startup. Do you have any memory? Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Of course, I lived through the whole thing. So my dad got fired, and he started a company in our basement, in our house in Cresskill, and it was a split-level house. And one day, he was not at work, and he was home in the basement. And we came home, and we're like, oh, Dad's in the basement. And he put in a phone, and he's like, don't answer that phone, no matter what happens. And we're like, okay. So back then, you didn't ignore phone rings.
Yeah.
You know, people don't realize that. But anytime a phone rang, you answered right away. So we'd look down and we'd just stare at this phone ringing in the basement. And then I wasn't very good at spelling. I inherited that from him. I got better as I learned to read over the years. But so he would quiz me on spelling tests in the basement while he was at an old wooden drafting board with this beautiful blue graph paper, drafting out schematics and things, because he's an electrical engineer by degree, and he was picking up whatever projects he could. So I'd look at his drafting tools and I was so fascinated with them. And then if I got 100 on my spelling tests, you know, because he'd be quizzing me down in the basement, then he'd make me like a giant airplane out of it, or he'd rub press-on letters and say, good job. And so that's how we kind of started fixing everything and anything with an ad in the yellow pages. So then it built from there, and he got certain jobs and certain things. And then me and my sister, who were in like kindergarten and first grade at the time, started doing assembly work in one level up in the playroom.
Wow.
And doing certain things. And then he eventually rented some space in Closter over a deli that had really good orange soda and cannolis that were
wow.
like, that was like the treat. And so we'd always be at work hanging out, or if my mom had to do something with my sister, they'd dump me there, and I'd have to watch my brothers, and I'd come up with fun activities for them to do. Or even in first grade, I was like, I want to go in and help. So I went in and I was bending resistors and capacitors. There was a little red form, and I'd bend resistors and capacitors. And he was doing weird things like there's a take a bite out of crime dog. He was automating that, and a little R2-D2 type robot. And he was doing certain automation controls on them for people and doing kind of independent work. And then he hired an employee, and he hired two employees, and then he had different equipment until he eventually went around the whole top of that deli and kept adding rooms on, which was kind of fun.
Wow.
And then he outgrew that, so we moved to 40 John Street, which was more of a first floor with a big garage door, so it was easier to get things in and out. And There I spent one April vacation helping make the signs that went into Lowe's theaters that said candy, candy, pop, popcorn, pop, popcorn. And I was gripping sockets and putting them into this metal backplane, and then it would flip down and go into an assembly, and then we'd put the decorative cover on top, and then I'm sitting there screwing in little light bulbs that color matched. And my dad was colorblind, so we had to help him.
Yeah. So is that how you become a woman engineer?
Well, I'm technically an industrial designer. I oversee all of the mechanical engineers, mechanical designers, the state-of-the-art prototype shop where I helped handpick each piece of equipment, and our documentation, our bill of materials, all of those things were things that I helped establish and progress, how we did those things over the years. But I just always was into the mechanical thing. I think it's just in my DNA. Like when I was in kindergarten, I was allowed to go into the basement, and there were certain tools I was allowed to use when Dad wasn't home, and certain tools I had to wait for him to use. And I was just so into it. I was down there all the time playing around, and he put a pressure forming machine in, and he was making these pain suppressors, which was unique at the time. And there was a Dr. Saul Liss that he worked with, who they made the electronic pain suppressor where they would put two probes and run the electrodes through to stimulate the muscles, which helped with pain suppressant. And that was so unique. Now you go to get physical therapy, and everybody and their brother has one, and you can even buy one for $20 at CVS now, right? But back then it was so rare and unique, and he has a patent on it. Yeah. And so he had to pressure form them, but of course he was also very artistic, so he was building out of clay this Count Zorski, we called him, mask. And so he and I were down there and like really into it, and then he pressure form it, and I wanted to paint them, and we talked about all. So I started to learn these things. It was just in my nature to like it. He'd be like, "Hey, want to go for a ride?" I'd be like, "Yeah." I wouldn't even ask where we were going. It's just like, we're going somewhere. I'm gonna do. And if it was the hardware store, oh man, he would go off doing his thing, and I might follow around and listen in. But then I'd go off and I'd look at all the bolts and the screws, and I just love the hardware store.
It's so rare for a woman to be in that field, especially.
Well, I think it's rare for women to get exposed to that field. I think there's lots of women who are interested in that, but then they're handed a Barbie doll.
Yeah.
So I never handed my kids Barbie dolls. The ones they got were presents from other people, giving them things.
Yeah.
I never handed my kids Barbie dolls. I took phones apart with them.
Wow.
And in I think second grade, I was like, "Oh, look, I got another broken there." And my daughter's like, I know. It's an elastomer keypad that's underneath the caps, and then that's the circuit board. Yeah.
So they know circuit boards since they were kids.
Yeah. Because I'd always take whatever was broken. Oh, the phone broke? Okay, great. Now we have a project to take apart. So,
amazing. So Crestron is a front pioneer for home automation, office automation, essentially the entire automation, the core. But we're trying to promote Industry 4.0 with automation for all the other businesses. Can you give us a few examples how Crestron did so well, and how does automation become so integrated into your DNA?
Well, 4.0 people see differently, right?
Yeah.
So some people say there's only one real industrial revolution, but some people see these four as counting coal, electricity, nuclear, and now 4 is really green energy, right? And so that part of it I really like. So like we just had a meeting about something, and I was like, you can't make an art project out of it. You can't glue that. You can't overmold the metal in the plastic. You have to keep it simple. You have to keep it clean. Ideally, if I could snap something apart, drop it down, and then have an automated sorter sort it into recycling. We need to design and think that way. We can't always get it exactly that way, but we have to. That has to be the goal that we're working towards. And from day one, when I came in years ago, back in the early 90s, we had styrofoam corners. We had like 8 styrofoam corners around a box and then in another box. And I was like, this is nuts. So I got rid of that. I got rid of all the styrofoam many years ago, decades ago, and I put end caps that were corrugated on a smaller box, and I did drop testing and proved out that we didn't need to do all this over packaging and kept the packaging smaller. then I kind of pushed that for somebody else. So now I'm kind of taking that back a little bit and really pushing hard, and we have some good solutions for better environmental friendly packaging, smaller packaging, and I think the industry's changed a little bit. It used to be, I need to open the box and have everything I need in it. And then it'd be like 5 different mounting options, but you only used one or you didn't use any, and now that's all garbage. And people are finally seeing that they don't want to do that. And also then some regulations like, oh, you have to pay to dispose of waste. So then people are actually now more finally conscious, coming around to it. Like, oh, okay, I buy this and then I have to buy a mounting thing separate, and that becomes okay and normal instead of I need to open the box and everything's there, right? So I think it's good that the rest of the world's kind of coming around to this. And I've always tried to push, you know, when some of our product people are like, oh, we want this, and do you really need it? Or can we sell this and then give these as options for mounting because you don't know? Or, hey, find out what percentage. Is it 98% of the people are mounting this way? Okay, include it, right? But if it's 50-50, then let's think of a different way to solve that problem. So sometimes you can, sometimes you can. It depends. But I always try to think that way and push that thinking so that other people are thinking that way.
Absolutely. The whole world would really need this. And the Crestron achieved a huge jump in the past decade. What do you think some major shifts that Crestron took the initiative?
Well, definitely the ITO of things, right? Being able to log on. You know, it used to be, okay, you're on site and you're touching a touch panel, and then years ago we came out with apps on our phones, right? So that was a big thing about the IT of things. And then how much can you control in your home? And we came out with Ping, which said, okay, you can do your own home settings for shades or this or that, and time things in certain ways, so you don't have to have the dealer come in every time you want to, like, you're like, well, I'd really like the shades to go up at this time and wake my kid up in the morning or something. So you could kind of adjust that yourself. So that's really where a lot of the ITO of things came into, where you don't have to have the dealer, the end user can control their environment a little more in that way. And it also makes it better for the dealers, because then the dealer, instead of sending somebody out into the field, says, oh, let me look. And they say, oh, your system crashed, and here's the warning, and here's the error, and I can fix this remotely for you, and now your house is up and running in a matter of minutes or something, right? So we made things better as an overall user experience, which is always my goal. I used to, in this room, we used to have the whiteboard on this side, and somebody in the department printed out customer experience really big, because I kept saying it so much. Yeah. They just put it up there as a reminder for everyone, because I'm always like, okay, the customer opens the box. This is their experience. The customer has to install it. What's their experience in installing it? And people are like, oh, well, you just have to this. I'm like, no, I have a 100-story building with 10 conference rooms, and do I have to climb under the table? Do I have to do this? Do I need somebody else to help me handle this? How can I do this with one person so they can complete the building in the shortest amount of time, because they're not getting paid until this install is done? So I always try to think that way and get everyone else to think that way. And then, okay, when you have to recycle it or break it apart or whatever, where's it going? You know, what kind of thing can you do at the end? And the ship packaging, could you flatten it out? And, you know, so I'm always thinking full customer experience. And our customers are really our dealers, our installers, but also then we have the end users. So I think of both things, you know. And design for manufacturability, right? You can't make an art project. That's one of my favorite sayings. Don't make it an art project, you know, get that glue out of there. You can't jiggle it in and smush it down, and, you know, like, how is that automated, right? If I went down an automated line, the computer has to come and drop the thing down. It can't be jiggling and wiggling. And
we saw that, that robot for your final test. It was so amazing. I mean, I can use that, for example, for every other factories. Now, it's so instrumental you grow Crestron, you know, with your dad out of all this year, but you're also a very successful mom, raised 3 talented daughters. How do you encourage?
Well, I have 3 kids, 2 daughters and a son.
Oh yeah, sorry. And then with the new generation, how do you encourage, you know, the young generation women coming to the engineering and be inspired in the science and automation world?
Yeah, so somehow, well, when my kids were little and they did an invention convention in the elementary school, and I thought that was impressive that they had 2nd to 4th graders doing this, and I love that. And my daughter was so confused with the paperwork that the teacher gave them that I said, okay, come to work with me and I'll show you how an engineering notebook works. It's not a do the design and then write notes about it to hand into the teacher as a report. It's part of the process. It's part of the design process. It's keeping track of your ideas and thoughts and maybe going forward and backward to those thoughts and how that works. And then I explained this to the teacher. She said, I wish all the kids could have this. And so I said, well, and in true form, my dad used to come in for 6th grade. We had a teacher who loved science, and each one of us knew we were going to have this teacher, all 4 of us, because I have 3 siblings, knew we were going to have this teacher for 6th grade because he loved science, and he'd always make sure we were in his class so my dad could come in and do demos.
Wow.
We were in there. And like I helped my dad do a laser thing and stuff in the classroom. So I was like, oh, aha, you know. So
That's in 70s? You already have laser for science project?
Yeah, that was in
80s?
Yeah, no, it was in the 70s.
70s.
I'm
wow.
old.
No, you don't.
But so anyhow, so I was like, okay, here I'm channeling, you know, this is what you learn. You learn to give back. You learn to volunteer. My parents did that in a lot of different areas over the years, and so we saw that, and that's what I grew up with, and I like to think that's what I show my kids, and they see that. So I went in, and for several years I did that, and the teacher had told me a lot of the kids would all show up excited, and then most of them would drop it. And the year that I came in and talked to them and showed them what design is and explained to them that they weren't going to possibly make some automatic driving car and model it, but they could do a little sketch of it, or they could use some matchbox cars, or they could use popsicle sticks, and that if they did their first prototype and it looked horrible, that was good, that failure is part of the process. And we always talk about here, fail fast, because the one thing you can't get back is time, and that's another kind of Wendyism I'm always saying. You can't get back time. Fail fast, fail often. That means you're pushing the boundaries, work in a radial way, so you're never linear. And so these were things I kind of taught to the kids. And so then a lot more of them, it was like the biggest turnout ever that year of kids who followed the process all the way through. And also after I did that, the teacher changed her paperwork, so it made sense, because a 2nd grader doesn't know how to do an engineering notebook on just a blank piece of paper. They need a little guidance. And so it was very successful for many years, and my kids all participated in it and did some really fun projects, and their friends would all ask me for input or advice or help, or I'd see them. And then I volunteered to run the Saturday. Well, I volunteered to help with Saturday workshops because I'm a working mom, so I was like, well, Saturdays I can go in and help. And then the woman was very organized, and then I took her organization and turned it all electronic and made it easier, and eventually did online registration and things, and I'd get volunteer parents, and I'd bring in technical things like a robotics class and a forensics class and things to appeal to the older kids and the younger kids, and also art and knitting and all sorts of different varieties of things. And sports they did too. So when I was doing that, then all the kids would see me and recognize me from doing the invention convention kickoff, and they'd all, like the technical kids would want to talk to me about it or things like that. And then over the years, just people come up to me. There's Maya Notes, an all-girls school in Teaneck, and they asked me to come in do like this TED Talk with I think 5 other women for their annual Tech Day. And then they did a thing over here at our neighbors at the Jewish home where they did Carp Tank, and they had the kids interact with the seniors and come up with different devices to help different seniors. And so I helped them write the rubric for how to measure success to rate the projects. And then they put it on an iPad, and all the judges used that, which was kind of cool. And then kids would come up, you know, and when you're critiquing it, you're also giving them advice. I'm like, did you think about this? How would you handle that? In the future, what would you like to do with this? So I asked those kind of questions. And then they had to stop because of COVID. But I think I just asked her, and they're going to be getting it up again, you know, because they can't have a lot of kids coming in with seniors. And then I just not this past weekend, the one before, I was over at Bergen Academies, which is one of those kind of specialty public schools. And I helped judge a high school science fair, which I've done for the last, I think, 6 years maybe. And then in June, I'll help again with the middle schoolers. And I wound up being a head judge after doing it for like a year. And I help. And I'll either judge in environmental science or engineering, wherever they need me. And this year we had 45 entries.
Wow.
And that, which is
How
more,
could you manage that? You're already so
well, there were a
busy.
bunch of judges, and we all trust. And you have to. It's teamwork. So we had to trust. So one person said to me something, and I said they were a new judge. I said you have to trust the other judges, and then the head judges are usually people who've been doing it for a while. So we all trust and get each other. We're like, hey, did you see that one? What'd you think? And then they'll, and we have conversations. Or there's certain things, I saw a particular one and I saw there were 3 other types of projects, so I made sure I went and saw all 3, and then nobody else had. So then I had each one of the section, not the head judge, but when we're in the section, I had each one, I'm like, well, tell me what you thought about that project, and tell me what you thought about the other project, and tell me what you thought about the other project, and then I would say how I thought they compared, and then they would talk again, and then we wound up with which one of those 3 projects should move ahead.
So you're already busy building Crestron, and now you're also busy building community. How could you find any
and I
person
also
of that?
volunteer for the YWCA. I help. I've done a couple virtual structural things. I was like, how for no money and virtually can I teach engineering, right? So index cards. So I came up with a couple projects that we do with index cards, and I was like, grab a couple books around you, and then I have them build things, and then the test, okay, put 1 book, it stayed. I'm like, great, put a second book. Oh, it failed. Okay, great, you got it to fail. That's wonderful. And the kids all look at me, and at first they don't want to share. And once I start cheering them on for failing, then they all start wanting to show me everything, and they learn fail fast. So they're trying instead of, going really slow and waiting till the end. And then I give them a little thing like, can you connect these colors and things? Okay, you might be a circuit board designer, and I call it a ghost job. Like here in the United States, nobody in high school is going, I want to be a circuit board designer and go into school for that. It's something that everybody kind of falls into. And they might never ever know that this was the perfect career for them. They might go, well, I don't really want to go to engineering school, but I really like engineering, or I understand electric circuitry, but I don't want to go through engineering school, And so how you can get into different areas that you have an affinity for, but that you don't know about it because either you're not exposed, or because the path you think to get there is way harder than what your brain's wired for, or what you can afford.
Yeah, exactly. But I know your time is really tight, and today we have this power lunch that's going to be a nice feast for my brain. Before you go, I just wondered, can you give us a few nuggets for other women engineers in your position? How do you make them, more inspired and get better with their life?
Well, I really think the next generation of girls/women inspire me because they've really come into their own. The world around us has seen that women need to be respected more. None of these old games that I saw when I was growing up that we're still teetering between, and certain industries have moved out of sooner than others. And so just keep being the powerful, strong women they are. Be polite, be professional, but stand up for yourself and ask for what you deserve. Because I think from us, we just went in, tried to prove ourselves, tried to be better than everyone else, did all sorts of stuff, didn't raise the flag and go, look what I did, I did this, I did that. And we just hoped somebody would notice and give it to us. That works in the male world, and even today I see it still works in the male world. A guy can be mediocre and get promoted. A woman has to be the best she can be, and then she has to jump up and down and say what she did, just, and ask for that, or she's not going to get it. And when she does that, she might get judged for being like, oh, they're too arrogant or talking about themselves, whatever. But if a guy did it, it's seen differently.
Yeah.
So we still have a long way to go with our society about preconceived notions and about people stuck in an older world. But the younger generation, and especially my kids are in their 20s now and in their young 20s, and I can see the world through them, which is a beautiful gift they give me. And I learn a lot from them every day. And I think we see a lot of sad things going on in the world with people trying to step on people's rights in this country and in other countries instead of being accepting. But my kids' generation as a whole is way more accepting, way willing to change, way willing to see through the eyes of somebody else's experience and know that their success doesn't detract from my success, or their way of thinking doesn't have to be my way of thinking, and we can be coexisting, without hating on each other.
Yeah.
And so that gives me hope against the hate that we see forming around the world. And so I would just say, keep sticking with positive, keep building a positive world around you. And I've seen people, when I was a kid, people be like, I'm not having kids, I'm not bringing kids into this world, was a thing people said. But I said, I'm going to bring kids into the world and raise them to be beautiful people in a world where they respect people, respect planet. And my kids really have grown up to be that way, and I'm so proud of them. And so I like to think lessons learned, but also it had to be inside them to want to be that way as well. And they just are so empathetic to the world around them. The things they choose to do involve helping people, helping society, helping planet. And it's a nice thing, and their generation sees things that way. So if we keep pushing that way, 10, 20, 30 years from now, it'll be a good thing.
Great. I'm proud of them, I'm proud of you, and I'm proud of us. Thank you.
Very good. And I'm glad that two women are sitting here together, because
and we're in Crestron,
this is great.
The world leading company into home automation. Essentially, it's a life automation.